If you have been wondering whether Squarespace is the platform for your website, you are in luck. Today, I am going to be breaking down the pros and cons on building your website on Squarespace and whether you should or shouldn't do it. My name is Yasmin Robles with Robles Designs, where I create drool-worthy websites and brands for entrepreneurs who are hell-bent on taking over the world. I do this not just by creating pretty websites, but by also implementing strategy behind your website. Why? Because it'll turn your leads into clients and your clients into money. And who doesn't want money, right? So in today's video, we are going to be chatting about Squarespace and whether it really is a platform for you. And I'm going to be running through a couple of pros and cons. As of the recording of this video, Squarespace is where I have my website built, although my first love is WordPress, and I do still love working on WordPress websites as well as Shopify. So a couple of the pros on building your website on Squarespace is that it's really such an easier learning curve, especially for a lot of my clients who are not website designers, who have really no idea about tech, right? So they are coaches, personal trainers, they focus on other things that are awesome, but tech is not their jam. So they might be able to do social media, they might be influencers, but again, they don't want to mess with a website and be updating things, be making sure that it's backed up, all the crazy stuff, right? So if you find that you are not at all tech savvy, you're not willing to pay for a tech savvy person to be on top of your site all the time, making sure things are backed up and updated and all that stuff, or if you just want the simplicity of a site that has, I would say, a very simplified version of the admin panel, then Squarespace is for you. Compared to WordPress, a lot of my clients get a little flustered with the admin panel because there's a lot of things going on. They also have to make sure that plugins are updated, themes, and the WordPress core, PHP, is updated. And it just might be a lot for them. They're starting a business, especially if you're a do-it-yourselfer. You're starting a business, you're doing accounting, you're doing all these things, and then you have to add on to that a website developer hat. If you're DIYing your site and you know your marketing goals are aligned with it, then I would recommend Squarespace. Depending on your marketing goals, depending on what you're building out, we'll go through some of the cons of Squarespace, but you get the idea. If you're a VA or you are not really necessarily going to be focusing totally on the technology side of your business, then Squarespace is a good choice. The next pro is their customer service. So they don't have a phone number that you can call, but they do have a chat feature and they do have email, and they are very, very responsive. So if you are a person that likes to call up the company and ask them your questions, it might not be for you, but a chat feature and you're just emailing them if it's not so much of an emergency is just as good, but it really depends, right? So I hate calling simply because I hate being on hold. So with like other hosting companies, I'm not going to name them, but yeah, I've been kept on hold forever just because, and then the call is actually like a 5-minute phone call for me to check up on something. So with Squarespace, you can be on chat, you can be on, send out an email if it's not an emergency and get a response typically within a couple of hours, if not within 24 hours, I would say. But so far, their customer service has been really, really good. Squarespace is great because they really integrate everything. So if you imagine Squarespace has their own code, you could say, and everything works together because all of their developers are working to build everything. They all are speaking the same language, so it just makes everything run smoother. If you want a contact form, definitely Squarespace, you can just add it in there. If you want a e-commerce page, which we'll talk about, but if you want an e-commerce page, you just add it in. There's nothing, it's not like WordPress where you have to get all these add-ons, these plugins, make sure they play well together, test them out, and then push them live. It's not like that at all. Everyone is speaking the same language, and so everything works really, really well and smoothly together. They have even added a members area, which is basically locked content. It's not necessarily like a membership thing where there's a forum where people can speak and comment and chat. Another pro is that they have been leveling up their SEO. So I used to be really wary of Squarespace because I wasn't entirely happy with the SEO capabilities that they had, but they have definitely been leveling it up. And I would say that Squarespace and Shopify have really come to the point where it's now more about the content that you're putting out versus all the little tech bells and whistles. WordPress, I would say, is still the best one, but honestly, it's now more about the content. Is your content useful for people? And you can look at my other videos if you want. Really, to get great SEO, you need links to your site, you need to promote your site essentially, and you need great content to keep people on your site. If you don't have those, no matter what kind of tech you have on your site, no matter what kind of code, it's not going to work out. Squarespace, that code that helps you easily build up your SEO, Squarespace has been really working hard to make sure it's working for you as the content creator. Squarespace also offers an e-commerce platform. Now, I will say this is kind of in the middle. It's like a gray area. So it's a pro because it does allow you to create that e-commerce platform. It's so much better than others, but it has its limits. So if you are a full-on e-commerce platform, 200 or more products, I would say even 100 or more products, you are solely doing e-commerce, that's your jam. You are doing things like abandoned cart sequences, welcome series, all that stuff that comes along, SMS, all that stuff that comes along with your e-commerce your e-commerce website. You'll want to possibly switch over to either Shopify or WordPress. And the reason behind this is because Squarespace, you can think of it as a curated e-commerce store or like a luxury e-commerce store. It's something that does not have a lot of products. It doesn't have a lot of like all these things popping up and bells and whistles and all of that stuff when it comes to their e-commerce. It's not as powerful, I would say, although they are trying to make it more powerful, it's not as powerful as something like Shopify, whose whole purpose is e-commerce. Squarespace is generalist. It's made for bloggers, service providers, people who offer downloads, e-commerce. It's very general versus Shopify, whose jam is e-commerce. They don't do any other types of websites. They do e-commerce. So obviously Shopify is going to be a little bit better, and WordPress too is a little bit of a generalist, but with the right developer, you can create a great e-commerce site on there. With Squarespace, because it is for do-it-yourselfers or just people who want to wear that hat of the website creator, their e-commerce platform is a little bit simplified, but it is a pro to have that on there, because if you're selling like planner, maybe a subscription membership, a subscription box, then a physical product, a digital product or subscription, something like that, or events, that's pretty good to have it on Squarespace. Anything deeper, like if you're going to have 100 products or more, constantly switching them up, constantly having sales, it might get a little tricky to utilize Squarespace. Now to a few of the less than great things about Squarespace, we can put it that way. There's page speed seems to always, at least on my end, it always lags a little bit, not to the point where it's really affecting the site too much. And it really depends on what you're uploading to the site and all that great stuff. But it just seems like out of a lot of the other platforms like Shopify and WordPress, it just seems to lag a little more. Although I will say you can make the other sites slower depending on what you're uploading. Still, Squarespace seems to be a little bit behind the ball when it comes to page speed. When it comes to coding things, front-end coding is a bit easier. There's a lot of workarounds with Squarespace. You can create a custom site. You can create a custom mega menu, which is like one of those e-commerce menus that comes down and has more options. You can create a lot of great stuff on Squarespace, but it's not as friendly for developers. Although there is a developer format of Squarespace, it's not as, you just have to find workarounds to what you want to do, and sometimes add-ons like a third party. So before they had member areas, we would use a third party called Member Space to create a member area on Squarespace. Now that members areas are on there, we can get rid of that third party. now moving on to member areas. I've tested it out, and although it's great for locked content, lightweight courses, maybe I have my own free course, the website planning course on there. It's a little bit lightweight, so I wouldn't necessarily rely on that for a big course. I'm glad that I tested it out. I'm glad that I'm hosting the course on there right now, but I will likely, if you're not as tech savvy, I would likely switch you over to something else, some other platform. If you know you're going to be hosting your own courses and you want control of them, I would suggest something more like WordPress to build your site on. As I mentioned before, all the developers are building everything at once. They're all speaking the same language, so everything really integrates. The sucky part about this, though, is that because everything integrates so well, it's really hard, and it's their own code, right? So they're giving you the hosting, which I always say it's like the plot of land, and they're giving you the code for this website, which is like a template for the house, but you can't take that house with you, or at least the template, if that makes sense. Everything works great together on Squarespace, but then if you found a better deal for a WordPress site somewhere else, then, or if you liked Squarespace, but you don't want to pay what the monthly fee or whatever it is that you're paying with them, it'll be very difficult to move your site. You can't just pick it up and move. You actually have to rebuild it. Let's say you had chosen WordPress, you went with another one of the like Bluehost for your hosting provider. Everything is set up. Now you just have to, you can download some items and upload them. You'll still need to format them, but you won't be able to just pick it up and go. Versus if you had a WordPress site, you could take it from GoDaddy to Bluehost to SiteGround, and literally it's like picking up your house and just moving it, as long as you're backing everything up. You can't do that with Squarespace. It's basically recreating the site. So I tend to charge the same. If I'm recreating your Squarespace site on WordPress or your WordPress site on Squarespace, I charge the same because it's literally I have to recreate it. One thing to keep in mind with that, though, is that websites, at least for brands, our businesses tend to grow if you're doing well. We tend to need a new website I would say about 3 years in. So if you DIY'd your site, I believe about 1 year in, you should really get it professionally done. So you hit that 1 year mark. Celebrate with at least an updated website, if not a new website, because you've gotten to know your target market. After the 1 year, it should be around year 3 or year 4 that you will have likely grown enough where you can justify the recreation of your website. So that's around the time. So if you started with Squarespace and you've grown with Squarespace, around year 3 or 4, that's when you can then jump into another platform. So, or have to recreate your site. So for example, if you're still on that old do-it-yourself Squarespace site or whatever it is, WordPress, Squarespace, and you're in like year 4, think about updating the site, because a lot of the tech changes, a lot of the language out there changes, style changes. I saw a client recently who had a site that looked like it was from like early 2000s. So, things change. So you want to make sure that you're keeping the site fresh. To recap, the pros of having a Squarespace site are great customer service. Everything is all in one if you want it to be. So you could have your email, your calendar, contact forms, all that. You don't necessarily need plugins and other add-ons on your site. You can embed things on your site, which is pretty cool. They have come out with a members area, which is essentially just a locked content area. Great for small things. Their SEO is getting a lot better. Coding is a gray area, so you can put the custom code onto the site, but sometimes a developer might find it a little bit more difficult to work it in. Another gray area is e-com, so they do offer an e-commerce site, but it really depends on your goals when it comes to e-commerce. Their page speed is a bit low, so I would say that is one of the cons, as well as one of the biggest cons of Squarespace is that instead of just picking up your website and moving to a different hosting company, you actually have to recreate your site. There's no real good way of just taking the current site and going somewhere else. You actually have to recreate, which is great if you're going to rebrand and refresh anyway. It sucks if you've already done that, but just have decided that it's not necessarily the company that you want to stay with. So that is it. Squarespace is for you if you are a service provider, e-commerce, blogger. They really are a generalist, but it really depends on your marketing goals. So if you have heavy duty goals and you're not sure what platform to go on, let me know in the comments and I will give you my 2 cents. The other great platform is WordPress and Shopify, so you can look into those. And always just look for a free trial, test things out, see how you like the platform, and then make a decision that way, because you don't want to get stuck with a website or a platform that you actually can't use. So a lot of my clients chose something like WordPress and they realize that it just really overwhelms them whenever they log in, versus now that they've tested out Squarespace, they feel like it's a lot cleaner. And then there's others who have tested out Squarespace and they say, this is just too little options. I want all the options. I want to be the person who looks under the hood of my car to see what's wrong. Those people usually switch over to WordPress. So let me know what you think of this video. Make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell, and I will catch you in the next video.